So yesterday I had the opportunity to speak to Alex from AB Physiology, and we really delved into what it takes to be an excellent practitioner in our roles. And he's an exercise physiologist, and he takes the concept of using behavioral science and behavioral changes to help individuals with injuries and get them back on track again, but utilizing breath work and a holistic kind of approach to combining psychology with physiology and the usefulness of that to really get patients and individuals their outcomes that they come and see him for. And it was amazing to delve into that topic with him because we have similar, a similar mindset from that, and that might be because of our exercise physiology background and understanding that it's not just about the human body, it's also about making that the connection between the two and connecting with the individual to get what they want. We delve into all things breathwork, stress, yoga. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I really enjoyed talking to Alex, and I'm sure we'll chat again. If you like this episode, please subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
So what I'm trying to do with AB Physiology is exactly the same thing, but for physiology, because I see an EP as this position that sits between psychology and physiotherapy. It's like behavior change, but there's a fair bit of musk in it. You need to have the behavioral psychology stuff because I viewed EP as managing chronic illness through lifestyle intervention, which means my skills are behavior change. So that's what I came out with a master's degree with, and I happened to work with some brilliant people along the way. And follow in the footsteps of some really brilliant exercise physiologists who are still now just like crushing it. And by paying attention to those people and different, around that CrossFit boom, the different mobility WOD, like Kelly Starrett, and keeping my ear to the ground with those guys, and the shift adapt guys as well, following those threads, but building on this master's degree in physiology. And I've always been competitive, and I've always tried to do my best in everything I've ever done. So I was like, if I made the problem simple, which was lifestyle change.
Yep.
Took that, and then I was like, cool, send me in straight from university to working exclusively with war veterans, who, if you've worked with them before, are a challenging population. So I was like, sweet, let's go straight into the deep end here. And one thing I noticed is that with every chronic illness comes the associated stress and anxiety of that condition, because you've had it for 6 months at least. Then the doom and gloom comes in, all these different things, right? So as I was working through these really difficult people, I was like, they all need to calm down. But they never knew how to calm down, and they're so closed off to anything remotely spiritual, because I've been doing yoga for 8 years at this point. So I was like, oh yeah, you could do this, but I'm like, they aren't going to be able to do that. It needs to be way more broken down, and they need to understand why in their own context. I'll get to that a bit later, but then I kept following, did the Art of Breath course, and it kind of connected a bunch of dots on a really fundamental level, in the sense of I left that Art of Breath level 1, and just because of the knowledge that it was delivered on top of, I was just I could teach that tomorrow. Nothing necessarily new. It was the way they painted the picture that was so beautiful, and that's why Rob Wilson and Brian McKenzie are incredible for that. It's because they painted this picture, and I was like, oh shit. That just reaffirmed all of the parts of my master's and undergrad degree that actually I took away from, which was a physiology and my disappointment with the psychology element of it.
Yeah.
It just seemed counterintuitive.
Yeah.
They seemed to treat them differently, and I was like, they're the same. I blew up my right knee on Saturday night at the Queensland Jiu-Jitsu state titles. And I lost my train of thought. In having to go through that explosion of my knee, and then fighting straight afterwards and coming down that, I used everything that I've been working on in smaller problems to bigger problems. And to me, whether it's a physical discomfort in my knee or anxiety in your mind, you've got to break it down to small measuring steps to see where you're at.
Yeah.
And if it's too much, you got to stop there and be like, I got to spend some time here and adjust. So with my knee, I couldn't really walk downstairs comfortably yesterday. So I was really heavy on the handrails, but just pushing it to its comfortable edge. Today, I can walk down the stairs.
Yeah.
There's swelling in my knee, but it's just fluid. There's no real crazy hot spots. Nothing feels ruptured. There's no sharp pain. But I also know like I had to calm myself down on the hour and a half drive home from Brisbane.
Yeah.
With an ice pack strapped to the back of my leg. And like, you know how you were saying you got to sit through and differentiate thoughts and feelings? I realized on the drive home, my jaw kept getting really tight because I was thinking about what this felt and sounded like when it happened.
Yeah.
And the thing I'm most disappointed about from my performance at state titles was the fact that I wasn't stoic enough to not scream, because the sensation and the sound made me like, fuck. And in that's a verbal tap. So I lost the match. But I got up and I was like, fuck, my knee's okay. But I'd already screamed. So I can't reset the match and like say nothing broke. Because it was an accident. The guy wasn't going for a submission. Awkward force, and my knee like subluxed down and across and went bang. And it makes the guy and the referee and the guy that did it to me was just like, bro.
Their reaction was probably even worse than your reaction.
So much more, because I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, like the ref's like, I need you to go and talk to the medic. And I was like, okay. And I shook his hand, walked off the mat, picked up my shit, went to the next mat across, and I was like, where's my next opponent? And they're like, we got to find him. I'm like, sweet, can you get here soon? Like before I cooled down. I was like, I'm not going out like that. Like I didn't lose. I was winning on points too. So I went out and I beat this guy in like 3 minutes. And then I sat down for 5 minutes and my knee got a bit wobbly. And I was like,
yeah, call it a day.
Practice what I preach.
I
would tell one of my athletes to it's not worth this. And I had to take my own advice, which is very hard.
A few interesting points that you've made there in terms of your reaction. Number one, your first instinctual reaction was not to give up. There's that challenge inside aspect of it. And then there was the bit where you were in your car and you were saying like you were focusing on the pain and that was causing you to get stressed. And I think the difference between the two mindsets there is the meaning that you have behind it. And the meaning you had behind the other one wasn't, I'm injured, like this is stressful, this is annoying. It's like, I'm not, the meaning was like, okay, I'm injured, I'm not bothered, I still want to win. Now, like in the moment, it's hard to realize what that meaning you put to it. You know, it's a reaction. Now, what breath teaches you, and this is what your practice has taught you, is that you can slow down. You can take a few breaths and you can look at, okay, my knee's hurting. What am I telling myself? What's the story I'm telling myself about my knee? How far ahead have I got to cause, some anxiety or stress or whatever, my jaw to clench? And it creates that space to go, actually, no, that's just a false kind of perception that I'm creating, that my knee means that my career is over or my practice is over, or, but this challenge of me being the best is over. So I think that the perspective of those two moments that you had, where potentially it's something to do with the adrenaline and the stress response and the excitement being over here, to then coming more back into that, the parasympathetic nervous system, where you're actually more able to think rather than just being on top of like, okay, because stress on two sides has, you've got fight or flight. You're in the fight here, potentially in the flight here. What do you think of that?
Hold on, you're skipping.
You're back now.
Fight or flight.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Sorry, I just lost your fight or flight.
No, like you've got a stress response on both sides. You've got a stress response obviously occurring when you're in the actual fight, in the challenge, but that's that fight response. Whereas when you're in the car, there's still probably a heightened stress response, but it's turned to more of a fear response.
I think what was happening in the car is I was clenching up as I was going through the match in my head and when the force came on. So I was reliving that moment in my head and clenching my jaw and like twitching my fingers, and my knee would hurt. And I was like, no, it's just echoes.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're just hearing the echoes. You've got to stop reacting to the echoes. Because when I finished that second match, because like I came out and like I was walking on it and I was like, yeah, look, it's it's okay now. So I knew if I had that next match, I was like, because I felt really comfortable. I've worked really, really hard to be physically and mentally ready to step into a jiu-jitsu tournament and just take on the opponent in front of me, right? And just back myself and not think anything else, like just go. Because this shit happened. That's why I was like, okay, like it didn't phase me whatsoever. I was like, you have to make these you have to make these decisions in your head when you go into a thing like this, especially the level that I like to play it at, which is on a thin ice, that you have to be okay. Because I've been in positions in tournaments where I had a person's arm in a place where I could have broken it. And because I didn't break it, I popped it like 4 times. But because I didn't have that thing in me, because I'm, as a physiologist by nature, I'm a fixer. Like I love problem solving. I'm like, bring me your biggest issue, we'll get over it.
Yeah.
Bring me your biggest fear, we'll work our way through it. Bring me your bad knee, we'll work our way through it. If your bad back is your biggest fear, I am your man. Because we're going to hit it up here and then we're going to work on the physical stuff and we're going to tie them together, because that's where I think the terrible dialogue between, like, let's say mainstream over-the-counter psychology and physiology don't speak to each other enough. They need to give each other more credit. I've been lucky to work with some brilliant, brilliant clinical psychologists who saw the real value in skilled exercise physiology application, which is this thing of bringing those two together. Like, this is why we think, this is how we feel, this is how we feel, this is why we think. So in me, like, reliving that moment and that sound, because it was horrifying, reliving that in my head but then if you add to the level of like the visual I can give myself because of all the anatomy study and cadaver labs and things that I've seen, like I know a lot of practitioners who are very good at like visualizing their own suffering.
Yeah.
So that rabbit hole is one that can be fallen down as well, which I have fallen down before. I've hurt my back pretty badly in the past.
Yeah.
And you can fall down that rabbit hole, but then like your whole body seizes up because you think you're fucking broken. So like, holy shit. Whereas like I can sit in an easy cross-leg position today. It happened Saturday night. It's Monday lunchtime. I can sit cross-legged. There's still pressure, like there's still fluid in my knee. So when that goes down, we'll see how it goes. But I cannot, the improvement over the 36 hours, 48 hours is amazing. And I think one reason is I didn't go into shock. I didn't catastrophize it. I didn't like walk with it stiff as a board because I was scared to load it. I like loaded it to its comfortable edge. But I've done yoga for 10 years. Really, to know what my edge is. And for most people, it's all or nothing. They fall off one end or they don't start. And I'm like, there's definitely a middle ground. But you have to learn how to walk that path. And that's where my approach to physiology, I feel, is different.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting because I was competing in a powerlifting competition about 7 weeks ago, and about on the week 3 into the training, I thought I'd pulled my hamstring. I tried to do a bit of running practice just for a bit of power, or sprinting practice for a bit of power. Stupid idea, considering I haven't done it for like 2 years.
Wasn't a good idea. Wasn't a good idea.
Anyway,
no, running's fun. Anyway,
I pulled up after literally like I think the first sprint, and I was like, right, that's it, I'm done. And I put a post out. On my social media, and I was like, no, a little bit disappointed that I'd made the decision to go and do this, and that now I'm probably gonna have to rest up for a while. Probably won't be able to train or anything. And this guy reached out to me. And he goes, to be honest with you, he goes, the new practice of soft tissue injuries is just try to get moving as soon as possible. It's like try to load it on the minimum you can as soon as possible. He's like, don't mobilize it. Don't allow it to seize up. He's like, one day, and he goes, you want to be trying to do body weight lunges as light as you can and just getting that. And that's the new science of injuries. And you probably know more about that than I do because I'm not a physio. But no, have you got anything on that? Because I think that'd be quite valuable, people not knowing that it's inside information, where it's used to be, that right, rest, ice, compression, elevation, and just do that for 2 weeks and then start your exercise. Whereas I'm hearing now within the 48 hours, you should be starting to try and get some movement in already.
Every case is individual.
Okay.
But to me, I think if you just say like, do nothing, for 2 weeks. Like, nope. So it's just like, no, like that's just to me, I'm like, that's everyone looks for a reason to do nothing too. Everyone's like, I can't do shit. I can't. Like the world's like, I forget it's difficult. I can't. I'm like, no. There's always something, right? There is something you can do. It's a thing I preach with my breathwork stuff, whether it's for like stress for university exams. Like I had one young lady who started studying, finished one of her online exams, like in tears, didn't finish all the answers, didn't do very well, like total mess, right? Stress, anxiety, like messes with people more and more these days. But she came in, I was helping her for her back pain, which weirdly it's related. And ran through like just a bit of a step-by-step things to pay attention to leading into it when you feel anxious, because it was always just before, like leading into and during, like for that, like let's say like a 12-hour period. I was like, cool, we're going to think about these things here, this here, here. We've got these breathing things. We've got our little like safety net over here, which is our physiological sigh. If we're getting a little bit overwhelmed, let's do this one. Let's just, if we need it. She got every answer right on the next exam and finished 15 minutes early. Right. And I was like, all I show you is that you can calm down and make a better decision. Doesn't mean you're going to get them right. Like, you know what I mean? Like I made a bad decision at state titles when I left my knee in a vulnerable position because like this guy was hyper mobile and strong. And I'm not used to seeing that in the heavyweight division. So I was kind of having to puzzle this out. And he was very talented as well. Very talented. So I was trying to solve this problem, and like I talked immediately afterwards to my coach. I was like, yeah, you should have put your foot on the ground, so then you could have applied more force. And I was like, that's what it was, this one little thing. And I paid the price for it. So I'm like, okay, but I was calm enough to see what I did. And in the moment, I can go and fix that. The minute I'm back on the mats, I'll be drilling the thing that happened to me and how to get out of it. So that I kind of, the same reason that I had to have that next match is the same reason that when I was in Fiji on a family holiday at Namotu, this tiny little island near Cloudbreak, I hadn't bodyboarded much for 10 years, and then we were there for a family holiday, and we get to Cloudbreak, and it's like 6 to 8 foot, breaking on a reef. And I was like, 6 people got on the boat off the island, 2 people didn't get out of the boat when we got to the waves. And I was like, no, I'm here, I'll do this. And I got a few little ones. Then I got this one wave that was wild, and it was right in front of the boat too. And I just like bottom turned and got this insane barrel looking right at the boat, and then it just ate me. I put my knee through the reef, and then I got my board, and I look up, and I got a 5-wave set on the head, and I got washed way up on the inside of the reef, and I had to paddle back out, got into the boat, like obviously shook, like thought I was going to die at like 4 points in there. Got to the boat, then the boat gets hit with a rogue wave and almost goes over the falls too. And I was just like, whoo. So when I got back to the place and I got my cuts all cleaned up, there was still swell around, and the boat's going out in the afternoon. I was like, I need to go and get in a wave. I need to go and get a wave.
Yeah.
Like, you have to get back on the horse. You have to get back on the horse, or you will not get back on the horse. Even though I had like cuts on my knees, I was like, I'm just going to go gentle lefts. They were still big, but I was like, I need to catch some waves and just like be okay in the water. Otherwise I won't get back in. Same thing with that fight. My knee, I was like, it's okay, but I got to fight again.
Yeah.
To know that I'm confident in it, to then like when I'm doing my rehab, like I went for like a 5-minute like shallow water walk in the beach in front of my apartment. Like just marching like waist deep, like mid-thigh deep water with like currents, a little bit of cross currents, are quite unstable.
Yeah.
Just gently walking through that back and forth for 5 minutes straight, then came out. It's pretty much cold therapy too, cold exposure at the moment. And felt great. Like a little bit wobbly, but like, good Lord, there's so much fluid in it. Like it should be excruciatingly painful, because they've done studies where they inject 10 mils of like saline into a joint. Or 8, is it 1 mil? It could be 1 mil, 1 or 10. It's a tiny amount of liquid into a knee, and it will cause immediate pain.
Yeah.
If you realize that you've tested what you're fearful of causing the pain, and you're aware that those things aren't there, the pain receptors, the pain signals are obviously turned way down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense in terms of when I'm thinking of like there's two sides to the mindset that you've got there, and obviously majority of people, when they get injured, it's just like straight away, it's just like, nah, stop. And what no one does, and it sounds like what you have done is you're taking yourself a moment to reflect on, okay, is the pain that I'm feeling, is it just purely physical, or am I contributing to this by the concern and worry about what it also means to me in the future? Now, what you're saying is that actually you can override that by telling yourself, okay, no, actually, I need to keep on going. Yes, to a certain extent, you're using your knowledge and your intuition of your feeling of what that's like and what it potentially is, but you're breaking down that fear, that pain. Okay, well, is the pain 10 out of 10? Okay, now if I think about the pain and say, how much of that is psychological about the worry of what this means? Does that bring that pain down to a 5 out of 10? And does that allow me then to continue to maybe go out and do a bit more exercise the following day just to test it out? And I'm guessing that's kind of what the saline injection was doing, is initial saline injection, the fear, putting that fear of the injection in there. Okay, well, okay, there's pain there, stopping. But then actually going, well, it's just a bit of fluid in the leg. It's a tiny bit of an injection. What does that actually mean? Now I can still go out and do some movement with that knee. But for a lot of people, like, again, it goes back to the excuse of, does it just give a reason to be able to go, ultimately, I've got an injury, so that means I can't compete anymore? Is it giving them that reason? I remember when I was 18 years old and I got invited in the UK to a state rugby competition, to a training kind of like, what would you call it? It was like a trials, and I had a bit of a niggly shoulder, but I said, oh, no, I'm injured. And I always look back at it and that goes, I just told myself an excuse because I'm afraid I wasn't good enough.
I played a lot of high level rugby as a kid too, league and union.
Mm.
And like, I think I give my old man a lot of credit because he instilled this in me. Like he's an admirable man in many ways, but one thing is like a really simple through line in my father's life is that he couldn't speak English in kindergarten in Penrith. He went on to graduate second in his year with honours from Sydney University in dentistry, and he lost his father at 21.
Wow.
He went on to do all that, and then he gave my brother and I like every possible thing we ever needed. Never gave us everything we wanted, but everything we ever needed was accounted for. And like I had to work it off, like run it off. It's going to be okay. Well, no matter how well I excelled, you're not that great. Like he humbled me in a way that like people on the outside who didn't know how he showed how he cared would think he was a bad father. And they said that to me later on in life. That it was a bit too hard on me and my brother. And I was like, you didn't see all the other things he did for us. And you didn't know how difficult we were to live with because we tried to kill each other. It was hard.
Yeah.
Oh, wildly difficult, right? He had to like manage two boys who were like over 6 foot tall by the time they were like 15. Like, it's like having two adults who are children still.
Yeah.
Like, and when we'd fight, like it was on. So he had to try and manage that, but he did it such a good way, and he did it in such a good way that we both have like the utmost respect for both our mother and our father. Because they were very different in many ways. Because I had my mum who always told us we were fantastic, and we were like, whatever, mum, like, what's dad saying?
Yeah.
And dad was always like, you're doing okay, but you could probably do better if you stopped fucking around. And we were like, true. So we just kept trying to do better. Yeah. So I got to give heaps of credit to my father in like instilling that in me very young. But everyone, I think not everyone, a lot of people have some version of that in them. You need to just find what that is for them and what speaks to them. And that's learning how to get to know people. So like bedside manner in health, poor. The power of words in health, insane. I have spent weeks unpacking a 15-minute appointment with a specialist surgeon who's the best guy at ACLs or whatever the thing is. And I've had to spend weeks having to tell this person that they're not broken for the rest of their life. They can lift more than 15 kilos here. Oh, but I've
Yeah.
got these discs in it. I'm like, there's a guy who's got those discs who deadlifts 250 kilos. I'm like, shut up. Nah, but so and so, like the hierarchy of health. And like I'm saying, the higher up you go, the more money it costs for the least amount of time. And every word has such value in there, and they just throw them around. And I'm like, yo, you leave the pieces for me to pick up. This
That's
person
it.
goes to you to get fixed. You're like, you're broken forever. And I'm like, no, you're fucking not. Let me show you how you're not. And because I worked with veterans for so long, I could see these people for 3 times a week. You know what I mean? For some of them that
Hmm.
were like really high needs, and that's good engagement.
Yeah, of
So I got to
course.
play out these concepts of management. And because I had to look at behavioral shit, I had to make sure they understood they were worth helping. That's hard to find in people, especially if their identity is tied up in their illnesses,
Mm.
which is what this population's got a lot of.
That comes back to
And now,
the concept of like, no, it's just that you've got such an authority. Like our society looks at doctors and surgeons as a high authority in health. So as soon as you have heard that you have this, a disease, or you've got this issue, you've got this issue, it's cemented into the ego. It's cemented into their identity of, okay, well, you've now labeled me with something. You've now labeled me with an issue or a problem, and they're a high authority in the field. Okay, now I believe you to an extent where my story is now changed.
yep.
And you see it,
Brutal.
you hear of these stories where people, they go, okay, well, I want a second opinion. And I mean, I've worked in healthcare for 9 years, and I've had people come to me and say, for 7 years, a doctor was trying to tell me that my heart was absolutely fine. It's like, but it took me that long to have the courage to go and get a decision from somewhere elsewhere, and I found out my heart was the wrong way around. And
Yeah.
it's like, people make mistakes, but because there's an authority,
Medical malpractice, medical malpractice kills a lot more people than COVID. Like a lot more people than COVID. Like,
and
so
there's also the battle with not the doctor then not being able to let go of the story as well, because if they've said something to you and then all of a sudden they go in 6 months down the line and all of a sudden they have a change in their mind thinking, oh, well, was I not quite right with this? A lot of them are not going to be able to let go of their story of being the person that was wrong.
no.
And they'll just stick
This is the
to
thing
their
that
words.
yeah, but it's so counterproductive, and like, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but who are you getting your health advice from? Do they themselves look healthy? That to me is like why I practice what I preach. That to me is why I take these principles of breath work for stress management, and I'm like, what's a really stressful situation? And I was like, fight people who know how to break your limbs. Let's try and get you unconscious. And then I don't want to go and fight in the cage and throw kicks and punches, but I got some friends who do. We're professionals. So I'm like, let me teach you some things, boys. Let's make you all assassins.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to get buy-in with this stuff, which you know. So I got a couple that got buy-in. So I'm like, let's just hang out. I don't charge them any money. They come in and I have different things for them to play with. Like, put your heart monitors on, shadow spar, only breathe through your nose. But first we'll go through like how to like segment the breath.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'll teach them these skills, and I've worked with them for a while now. So I'll just play with them too. I'm like, here's just trickle these concepts in, go and play with them, come back. And then some of them are brilliant. So I just practice what I preach. So when someone sits in front of me and goes, I've got this problem, I'm like, cool, here's how I've helped people with that problem. Here's some ways you can manage it. Here are some troubles I've seen with people that like yourself, if I can, because this takes me weeks. Once I can get an idea of them, I'm like, here's this. Like, so if you go change your diet, like I've done every kind of diet you could imagine for 6 months, but I looked at it as performance because my goals and outcomes have always been performance based. So for jiu-jitsu for the last 5 years, having like beat the shit out of my body from like 14 to 20, playing high level, like rugby league and rugby union, through to like starting CrossFit and doing that for a bit with a friend of mine when he started, and he was an EP running that in that CrossFit space. So he's made this fantastic facility that has like high level coaches, and you know what I mean? Like such a good thing. And he's risen out of that boom and been kind of like one of the pillars left standing, which is a real testament to him and what he and we have all worked to try and build.
What's
So my
the name?
body
What's the name of that place?
Body dynamics training.
Body dynamics training. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. Trent Thurtell, like he's a legend. We grew up in the same small town.
Yeah, awesome. No, that sounds good. What we'll do is we'll probably just link that in the show notes underneath this, because I'll probably stick this on YouTube so that people can look out at that as well.
Sorry, hold on. The headphones have got. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Better. Sorry. Yeah.
You're back. That's all good. Yeah, I was just saying we'll probably stick that in the show notes. You just link me up and I can put that underneath, because I'll probably stick this on YouTube. And
so perfect. Thank you.
We can throw that across to those, and obviously your one as well. So yeah, it's anyway.
So, but when I came to jiu-jitsu and had to manage all this stuff, I was like, I had to get my mobility in check. That was always like the thing I'd neglected since I was I had physio since I was 13, being like, yo, you need to stretch. And I'm like, Roger, never stretched. Like, really cool vibe to grow up in. So like stretching was a low priority when there was like all the other fun things to go outside and do.
Yeah.
CrossFit got me way more mobile, but then like for jiu-jitsu, I had to like lean into the yoga. So it made me go to yoga a lot, made me breathe a lot. Made me learn that the art of yoga is just, being comfortable when you're uncomfortable is one of the key concepts. And then yin taught me how to find my edge. But when you're a stubborn, like competitive, athletic, try your hardest kind of personality type put into a yoga scenario, like you're often your own worst enemy for an indiscriminate length of time. For me, it was like 3.5 years. And then I was like, oh, doesn't matter what it looks like, just slow the fuck down. And then the next, like, I just excelled. It got so much better, and I learned more of the philosophy, and I was more open because I was listening, and I learned heaps, like so much, right? But I tried to tell my friends that, and I'm like, yo, trust me. You don't need to go so hard. Just like, don't look at the poses. Look at how calm I am. Like you're dripping with sweat, like you're grunting. I can see all the veins in your neck. I look like I'm about to have a nap. We're in the same position. One of us is trying too hard. You know what I mean? But you can say it to the person 15 times and they're still there like, and I'm like, okay.
I remember when I first, have you ever heard of RunWod?
Yes.
Yeah. So I probably started RunWod about 4.5 years ago. Because I had a femoral acetibular impingement in both my hips, so I couldn't squat at one point. And one of my mates just says, like, just start doing some RunWod sessions and just have a look at the impact it has on your mobility. And when I first started those minute poses, I was just like holding my breath, just battling through it, just like tensing up. And I was like, oh man, this shit is fucking hard work. And then I think maybe about 2 years into it, I gathered the concept of the breath, and all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, actually slowing your breath down. I think they tend to do 8 seconds in, 10 seconds out, so it's quite a slow breath
super
rate.
slow.
But it's hard to do until you've managed to get through the point of getting the poses actually right and being relaxed in them. But then the breathing on top of that is like the mental part. It's like, okay, can I now stay with this breathing rhythm? And when I started to get to that breathing rhythm, there was 2 things that I noticed. Number one was that when you do your breath out, you release and you let go, and you can go further into the pose, which I was like, wow, okay, this is the way of relaxing. Obviously, the breath out relaxes. And then there was the aspect of where I was the slowing the breath down, that I went internal.
Yeah,
that I stopped focusing on the pain and the tension in the joints, and I was focusing on what was going on up here. And then I realized that I had a lot of shit going on up here. And I was like, you're a stressed motherfucker. This is how you calm down. And that was like a serendipitous kind of way of me discovering slow breath. Despite working in medicine for the 5 years before in respiratory science, I hadn't discovered what was going on with how the breath and the breath, mind, and the physiology are connected.
Yes,
until
absolutely.
It was just like this moment where I just went, aha, now I think I've onto something here. And I started going into the literature and looking at what's going on, and just delved into this rabbit hole of breathing and what it can do for us physically, mentally, socially.
Yeah, I had a very similar thing. It was just like one day, like, this makes it way easier. But for me, it was the yin ones where it was like you hold the pose for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's when the demons came out. That's when you're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Right.
That's where it led to. It was eventually with the ROMWOD stuff. It was like 3, 4, 5 minutes, and I think they do like 10-minute forward seated forward folds, and like you pretty much just fall asleep in those poses.
I had a wonderful yin instructor. She's a Zen Thai massage therapist too. Her name's Kelly. She, to me, is like one of the greatest yin instructors I've ever heard. And I've done yoga in like places like Bali and these things, and at different studios, and she's just special in how she explains it. There's this wonderful mixture of like anatomy and then like the spiritual stuff. She's very dialed in that sense, and she really helped me learn how to relax and actually do yin. And it was like, for a lot of it, for me, it was like just using bolsters and blankets and like getting as many as you need. Like, get yourself propped up, like get yourself supported. We're going to be here for a bit. It's okay. And I was like, okay, cool. So like that's like a greater extent of like letting someone help you. You know what I mean? Like as a really black and white idea, you have to let like gravity be assisted by a block. You have to have the person tell you that too. Do you know what I mean? And that's hard for a lot of people, just to let someone help, like let them in.
Yeah.
But she was so great at doing that with a whole room of people. And like, that's just an art to me. And she's wonderful at it. So that really helped me learn how to like slow down and realize that my mind's going a million miles an hour. That's why my hamstring's so sore. Like if I just slow down, find my edge, sit there, try and breathe right down to the bottom of my belly. And then to me, it's just like playing cat and mouse with my breath. Like how much can I control it? Like how smooth can I make it? And I did a yoga class the other day, and I met these two odd fellows out the front of the yoga studio, and they just started talking to me. I was very much in my own, like, I didn't really want to have a conversation, but they did. So they started talking to me in the class. They were doing this wild breathing, man, like they were Darth Vader. And it was like so obnoxious at a few points. And I was trying in my head, be like, don't judge them. Yeah. What could they be trying to do? And at one point I was like, I just want to tell them, like, stop it. You appreciate what you're trying to do. But you've very much misread the vibe of what we're trying to do here. It was so over the top. Like, I was, because like to me the art in yoga is like your breath shouldn't be heard by the person next to you, but you should be calm enough and taking full enough breaths that you don't look like you're stressed. And for a lot of people have to take bigger breaths, but like that's often when you're like taking your recovery breaths in downward dog or child's pose. That's when you kind of like whoosh, wash it off. Do you know what I mean? And I was actually, honestly though, the most impressed was like how hard they were trying to breathe. And I was like, I love that people are doing that now. Like there's so much awareness of the breath. It might be misplaced, but like people are aware. So it's a really brilliant start.
I guess it's hard to, you said you don't want to judge, but it's also hard to, okay, there's the aspect of the breath. And if that class or that instructor has been teaching about using the breath, is that person making those noises to overcompensate, to say, hey, look, I'm doing it right, I'm going to make noises with my breath? Or did they just have no clue and they just had no breath control at all? And it was just like like,
bro, it was like a,
okay.
And I was like, what is happening right now?
It's
like, it was a
like
vinyasa class. Just taking one, like breathe as big and strong as you can. Like, I can do that. And they just ran with it. Bless their cotton socks. They were giving it a red hot go.
Yeah.
But it was very just distracting for everyone else in the class. And I was like, this is hilarious. But like, again, these dudes obviously like went down some YouTube rabbit hole on breath work. And that to me is exciting. Because at least people are looking around.
Of course. And coming back to the center of what yoga is, which is breath first and balance and then mind. So, and there's also lessons in that for you.
100%. There's lessons everywhere if you're open to them.
if it's a distraction for you, how can you stay centered with your breath and not allow that to distract you, despite it being the most annoying thing right next to you? Are you?
It did give me the giggles. It made me happy. Like in the moment, I was smiling, but afterwards, I was like, that was obnoxious. Like in the moment, it didn't take me out of the pose. Like I felt very, very like calm and centered,
Yeah.
and I felt very controlled. I think because I'd spent so much time on yoga and stability and things like that, that's why I'm able to, let's say, get my knee moving as quickly as I have.
Yeah.
Is not to say that there's anything necessarily special about me. I'm just very aware of how much range I've got and how much stability I have. And by constantly expanding those boundaries when they're taken away, I can come back out carefully and be like, okay, cool, I'm here now. And then work my way forward from there. Is from spending so much time in that situation where you could easily get distracted and lose your balance. And then be pissed off at them because they broke your attention, right? Like, no, it's not his fault. Like, you've got to control your response.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the heart of breath work, though.
It is. I mean, that's the whole the art of just letting go, which is the concept of what breath does. You said
I've got a workshop called that.
Yeah.
Sorry, you cut out.
No, it's like what you said earlier, where you've got the excellent teacher who is teaching you how to, the communication skills that she has to let you know that you need to be able to let go and allow someone gravity to help you, and for me to help you. It's also in your ability to let go of that, not wanting the help, is not wanting that kind of support as well. And that's where the whole art comes across. It's not just the teacher, but it's the pupil at the same time. And the communication is, or I guess you'd call it, the relationship between the two is what enhances the ability to further progress those skills and the knowledge and the practices that you'd have in yoga.
I think you've nailed that in a sense of, I couldn't have worded that better myself, but that's what I think is the important thing if you're a clinical practitioner, is being able to do that.
Yeah.
Being able to be that teacher for that client. And if you treat the client more of a student and less like a client or a dollar sign, the latter being often the issue, is if you just see it as like a student and you're trying to teach them something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I need you to understand this. I'm not doing it for you. You're doing this. And I emphasize this in initial consults, is like, I teach you things. So I have to understand and the teacher's got to be at the level of the student to begin with so that they can rise up together. Right? I can't just talk down at people or talk down at someone. No one likes that.
No.
Right. So I've got clients who are 5 and I've got a new client coming in who's 7.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest client was 94. He was a World War II veteran.
Yeah.
So because I've worked with like kids to Olympic freestyle BMX riders to high level MMA fighters to like just a mum. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in between. I've always looked at it as that sense of like, I need to find out some things about them to get to know them.
Yeah.
And that's like, make them laugh, make them comfortable.
Yeah.
And then once you get to know them, you meet them where they're at. And then I'm like, cool, I'm going to walk next to you on this path. I'm not going to drag you. I'm not going to carry you. I'm going to walk next to you. I'm going to point out things like, don't pick that up, like watch out for that. And there's going to be choices you're going to make along the way, and I'm not going to pick them for you either. I'll be here to be like, fool, wouldn't do that one though, but it's like your choice. Do you know what I mean? But in taking that model, eventually then you don't need me on the path anymore. You're good. If you need my help, come back and ask me some more questions. But that's kind of the model, which is so counterintuitive to what common practice is in, say, physical therapies. And these like outcome-based practitioners as opposed to income-based practitioners are where I think like the road's kind of splitting.
Yeah.
And the guys who are really focused on outcome, I've spoken to, and we all have the same idea. Like, give people the tools to take care of themselves. A really foundational tool that you and I understand very well is that, like, if you can slow your breath down, detach or create space between the negative stimulus or the upsetting stimulus and your response, Just a little bit of space. You don't need much.
Mm.
It just can't be an emotional reaction because they're often always incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get in this spiral of being upset at ourselves for becoming upset. And then it's just like, right? So the breath teaches the space for you to then move forward more appropriately or with a better outcome likely.
Yeah.
And then that's just the jumping off point, because then we just apply it to your problems. So whatever the mountain is that's in front of you, we climb over that mountain, we learn some skills, we realize there's a whole bunch of other mountains behind them. That doesn't make us sad. We have all these skills from that last mountain. It was fun. Let's go. Because in overcoming a hurdle, you get like the uplifting positive of like
some release of dopamine,
got to the
right?
top of the mountain. Yeah, 100%. You succeeded in a goal.
You're moving forward.
Exactly.
I like what you touched on there, where it was you were talking about, you know, the nature of being a clinical practitioner is learning about the individual first, and not just learning about what they are talking about in terms of injury or their diagnosis or what that is, but what it means to them and the language they're using, the body language they're in, their state they're currently in. Because I see patients, they've been diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea, and all of a sudden they get told they've got to go on a machine, they've got to wear a mask at night time. For a lot of people, it's scary, but for a lot of men, yeah, it's a dent to their ego. And yes, when I see them coming in and they're pissed off, they're angry, they're sitting down, arms crossed, and I can see
don't want to be here.
Don't want to be here. If I just then go to them and say, hey, look, here's your results, here's a machine, what's the likeliness that they're going to go, great, I'm going to go use that every single night now?
Not a chance.
But if I sit down with them and go, I do this as well, go, hey, like, what's going on? What are you here for? And they'll tell me, oh, yeah, my partner's moaning that I've been snoring, and I'm here for, I've got sleep apnea, so I'm here to get this machine. I don't really want it. I'm like, okay, well, why don't you want it? And if I gradually open my body up and slowly reveal myself and say, had the conversation back with him, you see their body change.
Yeah.
And what you can do is you can find out the meaning they're putting into the stories they're telling themselves. And it's literally, okay, well, what does it mean you go on a machine? It means my wife's not going to be attracted to me because hold on a second, your wife's already annoyed anyway because of the story. Is your relationship going to be better with you sleeping better and her sleeping better? Or the relationship where you're having, because you're snoring, she's gone in the other room? Which one's better? And then it's all of a sudden you help change that story. And then the next minute they've overcome that kind of hurdle. And it's like, okay, the dopamine's then taking that step forward. And then the next step is actually using the machine. And if you've got dopamine here, your next step is you're already in motion towards that.
Exactly. And then I had to, because like you say, like people, like that was like my average client for a long time was like a 60 to 75-year-old man. Like most heaps of Vietnam vets, legends, wild boys. Like honestly, I had the funnest 4 years working with this population of people. Many inappropriate jokes were had, many laughs were had. Like it was good. It was fun. I got so much, like it just imparted wisdom from them too. Like you can
100%.
learn something from everyone. And I learned that because a lot of these people, especially in this day and age, a lot of the people I was talking to, if people knew their beliefs, we want to burn down their house, right? Mm-hmm. If Twitter or the internet found out about how these dudes joked amongst themselves, they'd be like, these guys are the problem. But they'd miss the fact that these guys are making jokes. They have good intentions and they give to charities, and they probably do actually more substantial good in actions than people who get angry on the internet will ever do. And it made me just because I used to get kind of annoyed at things I read on the internet. And one of the clinical psychologists I used to work with was this genius dude from Norway. They're like robots though. Norwegians are damn close to robots. Right? But sweetheart of a guy. And he was like, why do you get angry? I'm like, this is insanity. Like, has no one read what happened in Russia and China? Has no one read the Gulag Archipelago? Like, read what happens when these ideas get played out to the full extent, and they don't stop until they fall off the edge. This is what the edge looks like. It's called concentration camps. And he was like, but you have to just laugh. Like, this is a clinical psychologist telling me this. I'm like, what do you mean just laugh? And he goes, it's ridiculous. It's preposterous. I'm like, I know, that's what makes me so angry about it. He's like, yeah, but it could also be the thing that makes you laugh. And everything he said that to me, I was like, that's so true. And by like the combination of that and those old boys who, like I said, had some outdated beliefs for sure that I tried to like steer them the right direction on appropriately. They were really, in many other ways, fantastic individuals. And that's like, I think a lot of the wisdom you get from age is realize that like people can talk and people are all these different things, but it's like the people that are in front of you that you're talking to the most who are like, you'll find the good in a lot of them. They're not as bad as they're made out to be. Like, no one really is.
No, it's just the nature of that, how they've grown up, and to go through
they're
such
ignorant.
They are, because to be ignorant, they have no idea what the world's like now. But the world that they have, we have no idea what that world was like. Now, if you're going back to World War II and those sort of things, like we're living an easy world. Yeah, we're scared of COVID virus.
We're living the dream. Cool. We're living the dream.
Yeah, COVID virus. Yeah, it's the worst thing that's happened in many years. But what does it mean? You're just locked up in your house in your comfort, and you're getting food delivered to your door. And it's not the whole of the world's like that, but majority of the West are. But I wanted to ask you a question. How receptive do you find those individuals to being open to your ideas?
I don't think like that's one thing like I used to explain about them is I say like vets are just like everyone else except like all their problems are turned to 10. And you get different personality types. So like it's the personality types who are a bit more open to yoga and stuff in that problem. It's the same as you'd expect and hope for. I could turn a few of the old boys because I could show them what I could do to their blood pressure.
Yeah.
Like if I could show them numbers, like if I could be like, yo, let's look at your blood pressure. Cool. It's like 159 on 110. Sit down. I want you to breathe in and out slowly doing this pattern. Don't think about anything else. I count them in and I get them to count for a bit and I keep it at a distance, like a time frame that they'll pay attention to. And I can drop like 30 milligrams of mercury off their systolic.
Yeah.
They're like, what? That's magic. And I was like, imagine if you breathe slowly through your nose all the time, Bob. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I've been telling you for a while now. I see you walking in with your mouth open. Shut it. No one wants to hear what you have to say. No one values your opinion anymore, Bob. I'm sorry. But like I used to make jokes about them a lot though, because they've got senses of humor. But
well, that's it. You've got to connect to them. If they're giving out jokes to you, you just instantly know, okay, well, this is just going to be one of those, a bit of a boisterous conversation, a bit of a laddish kind of conversation, but also you've taken that logical route, more of a masculine energy route, with saying, I'm going to show you numbers, going to show you figures, going to show you a structured program of how we can get this to come down, rather than giving a connective language to saying, hey, this is what we can do for you emotionally. It's like, that's where the tools of communication, the skills of communication, so vital to a practitioner, that is often missed when people are coming straight out of university and going straight into practicing. Is it's all about, okay, what do I know in terms of knowledge? How can I show that I'm the person they need to come to in terms of telling them everything about their body and how I'm going to fix them? Not using the language that they're receptive to get the outcome that they need.
That's like how I teach this stuff to 5.5-year-old kids. Like I've got a 5.5-year-old kid with ADHD who got suspended from school already in like whatever first grade. Struggles to downshift from playground to classroom. Super intelligent though. Walks into our office and is like, that's a brain. And I was like, it is. What's that one? And he's like, And I was like, it's in here and it goes boom, boom. And he's like, that's a heart. And I was like, cool. What's that one? He's like, lungs. And I'm like, yeah. What's in the middle? He's like, heart. And I'm like, well done. I'm like, what's that? He's like, face. And I'm like, what's under a face? I'm like, skull. I'm like, there you go. It's a skull. Well done. So like 5.5, like bang, 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 bang. I was like, you're clever. Fantastic. Sit down. So we just did like monkey breathing where we go like, So it's just like it's an inhale, hold, exhale, but you got to feel like relax on the exhale.
Yeah.
You got to sit still. Oh, it's all play. It's all play. I even tell the parents, like I got a 7-year-old coming in for an initial on Friday, And I'm like, I need you to explicitly use the word play.
Yeah.
Like, this is a child. We go to the gym to play with our breathing and exercises. We play or play with equipment. Like, it's all about games and fun. Because they're kids, that's what they're supposed to be doing. And if it can be like an educational fun game that shows you as a parent how to calm your kid down, like in the moment, listen. And I said the parents have got to be there as well, obviously, but I'm like, you need to pay attention. Do you want to take notes? Because by just simply doing that, like inhale, hold, exhale, and practicing it before bed, it like slows your spinning mind and you can sleep. And then apparently dad came home from work and they clashed. So they were about to have a big fight, and mum took the son away, like into his room, closed the door, got him to do the triangle breathing, and it took a 10 out of 10 explosion down to a 0. So that's what I mean about you just got to get it, like the message. It doesn't matter. Like, I can sit down with you and we can go in depth now on all the anatomy and physiology and what actually happens.
Yeah.
But what's the most important thing as a practitioner, if that's what you want to do, which is help people, you need to be able to deliver that package in a digestible way. But I don't know where they're going to get that if they go from like school to uni to practice. Like, I learned these skills from working in kitchens, working in bars, working in cafes. I learned these communication skills of being able to talk to anyone is because I worked as a host at a restaurant where I had 600 people in a night.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to teach that necessarily, but I think being able to be calm and comfortable will allow you to be yourself more, which is, again, comes back to the breath work of relax. It's okay. Take a few breaths. Just be yourself. You know what I mean? I think people get too caught up trying to not be the wrong thing anymore. I'm like, just be you. And if you do something wrong, people you care about will be like, hey, don't be a dickhead. And then you're like, you're my friend. I trust you. Roger. 100%. Do you know what I mean? Like, but then you're like putting yourself out there to see where you might be overstepping instead of keeping it all inside and then just carrying this around with you. And again, that's what like breath work and the meditative aspect of having to sit down with your own thoughts. Because then you might be able to say like to your partner or your friend, if I'm like, hey, like I feel this way about myself. Is that how I'm seen? And you can be like, no, you're an insane person. And I go, okay, good. Like that's what your friends are for, to ask those kind of questions too. Like, am I being preposterous in my fear about going to Indonesia? Like, not really. It's a reasonable thing to be nervous about. It's a big move. But is it an exciting move? Absolutely. Are excitement and fear real similar? Sure. Is it what we put around it? Absolutely. But like, you don't get the reward without the fear. Like, you don't get the great feeling of winning a match if you don't step onto it in the first place to lose. Like, yeah, you have to, like, the fear is there. Like, the nervousness is there. Like, I talked to 260 year 12 students about breathing for stress and anxiety at one of the biggest schools in Queensland, all at once. I was on strict orders not to swear because I'd met with the vice principal and my friend who worked there, and they were like, get the information across, but don't be too much yourself. And I was like, okay.
Ouch.
Like, stick to the script. Oh, I knew it. Like, I've worked with veterans for so long. Like, I don't doctor my speech very often.
Yeah,
I'm very like blunt, and I just joke, and I say like, if something's shit, I'm like, that's fucking shit. Like, that's what it is. It is what it is, right? But I understand I was on the best behavior. It went so well though. Like, I had like 75 to 80% of their faces on me for an hour, like up, like looking at me. Some teachers came up to me afterwards and were like, we have not seen a whole year group sit still and pay attention like that in recent memory. And I was like, thanks, that's fantastic. And I was sitting there afterwards and I was like, beforehand, man, I was sitting there when they were walking in, I was hot. I was like, I feel like I'm about to fight everyone. Like, because it's the same feeling I felt before I've had professional jiu-jitsu fights, like on a fight night, sitting upstairs waiting to go up, you just get hot. So I sat there at the front of the room as they all piled in, just like burning. And I was like, it's good. I just like slowed my breathing down. I could feel my heart beating in my chest. And I was like, I know what I'm doing. Let's go. And it made it awesome. You don't get the awesome outcome without having to sit in those nerves and channel it. That's what the shift adapt guys are all about. It's about stress adaptation, using stress like a superpower. That's what it does. But it only works if you apply that superpower at an appropriate level. If you try and go too far with your superpower, you're going to fall off. The same as everything else we've talked about. It's about the application of that superpower, and then we build. So sure, you may never be able to stand in front of 260 17-year-olds and be confident and deliver a strong message that was taken on board. But what's your version of that? And then how can we get to that? So that you can overcome that and be like, see, it wasn't so bad. And then move forward with all the skills you've built and developed on the way to overcoming that thing. It doesn't matter what it is or what you're feeling. Just slow your breathing down, take it in, and be like, let's go. Because you're there already.
I think there's
if you're feeling these feelings, you're there.
100%. And there's a couple of points that I really want to just touch on there before we finish up. Is number one, massive respect for seeing there's a need to teach children how to manage their physiology, because that's not something that's taught in schools. And it's something, if you can get it in at an early age, how much of an impact on that child's future life have you had? Massive, because you're teaching them the skills that are fundamental for life going forward. And it really needs to be drilled into schools that we need to do this. So going in and having that talk is one of the best things without framing your life.
I'm going for it, don't you worry. I'm aware how much they need it.
And then going back to the communication part where you're talking about working in the restaurants and all that sort of stuff, but even just playing with other children consistently at a young age and socializing rather than being on a computer and the iPad and being on your own and just playing on games, there's going to be a differential there.
Oh, I've got a 12-year-old kid who doesn't leave the house. He plays video games and he's on a computer. He's 12, doesn't go to school, and he's on screens for like, I don't know how many hours a day outside of sleeping and eating.
Yeah.
I think he leaves the house twice to come see me. And I was like, it's scary, bro. It's scary. Like, and he's very intelligent. Like, he's hyper intelligent. So it's frightening, but to see what happens, like when that gets so far down the line, like I totally agree with you. Like, that's the thing. Like, I see the extremes. Wherever I work, doctors and whoever it is find out if ever I've got like a little networking base, I seem to get the extreme cases. And I like it. You know what I mean? I appreciate the challenge, and I try to get outcomes, and I have got positive outcomes with this child so far. But it's going to be a process. It's going to be a process. And that, if you'd asked me 12 months ago, would you try to get into schools to teach to kids? I'd be like, never in a million years. They're nightmares. I want nothing to do with anyone who's under the age of 18. They all sound like entitled. All my friends who are teachers are just like ripping their hair out and live for the holidays. Like, I just feel sorry for them. But then now I'm like, okay, it's not their fault. Like, they're a product of their environment. Like, their environment's horribly skewed.
Yeah.
So what can I do? And I was like, the first thing I can do is get them to breathe a bit slower. So I've worked really hard to get in front of this school, and it's a really good opportunity to establish testimonials. And from there, it's about like getting me through the door.
Good.
Because if I can get in front of as many people as I can and have an impactful enough thing, and like the cool thing is, and I think you'll appreciate it, and we can finish on this if you want, is that one of my friends as a teacher at the school was like, oh, I've spewed, I couldn't come and watch you present. But some of my students went, and I said, what did they say? And they said, we never thought about our exhale miss. We never thought when we were stressed out to just exhale. And I was like, yes. That's the one thing. I was like, if you're stressed out, you're like, I'm like, try and breathe out slowly. You won't be able to. And then just keep going until you can go. And when you can do that, you'll be calm than before. Because everyone's like, take a big breath. And they're like they're already up here. They're just feeling the top 10% of their lungs to begin with. And they feel like they're getting strangled. I'm like, just exhale. So like a message came through to a group of people who might be the hardest to get a message into, seem to at least take away that like your exhale is what calms you down when you're stressed.
That's the one.
Bro,
That's powerful.
I was so happy. I was happy
powerful
with that.
message. Like if they've come away with that one message, that's the most powerful message that you can get from breath in the moment right there and then. It's been a pleasure to chat to you, Alex. It's been awesome.
Mate, so much. I think we'll talk again soon for sure. I got a few ideas I want to run by you. So
Yeah,
I'll message
definitely.
you and
Do.
chat.
Just if you want to quickly summarize what you do, and then just if people where to follow you, just if they do watch this information, then just give us a quick summary and we'll put it in the show notes anyway.
So I'm a clinical exercise physiologist based out of Varsity at Body Dynamics Training. I do online consults and I've got like a protocol system now I've just finished developing on like progressions of breath control and applications. There's four baseline ones, performance one and a sleep one. That comes with an initial consult and we do testing after the second and fourth protocols. And yeah, find me on Instagram, AB_physiology. Check out my website. It's got more details there. You can message me or email me through that. And man, thank you so much.
No worries.
To speak and share what
It's been
I
an
know.
awesome chat. It's been a good chat, Alex.
Awesome,
I look forward to seeing more of your content come out as well. I love it.
Cool, man. Thank you very much. I love yours too.
See you, bro.
Later.